The first crack didn't come from my father's hand. It came from the silence that followed. 200 people stood frozen beneath crystal chandeliers as my cheek burned and my vision swam. The orchestra had stopped mid-note. Champagne glasses hovered in mid-air. Someone's laugh died in their throat. And there I was, 34 years old, standing in a ballroom that smelled like money and power, realizing I had just been publicly erased. My father lowered his hand slowly, as if savoring the moment. Cameras were already rising, not in shock, in hunger. "You're a disgrace," he said calmly now, his voice carrying farther than the slap ever could. "And as of tonight, you're no longer my daughter." That was the moment my old life ended. I just didn't know yet that it had never been mine to begin with. Until that night, I believed my story was simple. Eldest daughter, black sheep, the family embarrassment who chose restoring forgotten art instead of expanding a ruthless empire. I smelled like varnish and dust, while my family smelled like legacy. The ballroom was packed for my father's 70th birthday. Politicians, investors, socialites who smiled with their teeth and calculated with their eyes. He stood at the center, silver-haired and untouchable, raising a glass to thunderous applause. Then he turned to me. "You think fixing old furniture's a career?" he snarled. "You think that's what a Whitmore does?" "Dad," I whispered, "please." That only made it worse. "This is exactly the place," he snapped, voice booming. "Everyone should know what a failure looks like." And then his hand moved. The sound echoed like a gunshot. My stepmother's manicured fingers tightened around his arm, not to stop him, but to steady herself. My brother wouldn't meet my eyes. Someone near the bar muttered, "Is this real?" as phones began recording. "Get out," my father said, already smiling again. "And don't bother checking the will. You're cut off." Applause followed, nervous, polite, cruel. I walked out into the Chicago night with my dignity bleeding down my face and the internet already turning my humiliation into entertainment. By morning, the video had millions of views. By noon, I had no father. And by the next knock on my door, I would lose my name. 3 precise knocks. Not the frantic pounding of reporters. Not the hollow apology of a man who'd gone too far. 3 controlled knocks. "Miss Whitmore," a woman's voice said. "We're here on behalf of your biological father." The words didn't register at first. I laughed, short, sharp, almost hysterical. "You're a day late," I said through the door. "He already disowned me." Silence, then gently, "That's not the man we mean." When I opened the door, 3 strangers stood in my tiny apartment hallway like a verdict. Expensive suits, calm eyes. No sympathy, only certainty. The woman introduced herself and sat at my kitchen table without asking, as if this was inevitable. "Your name," she said, sliding a file toward me, "is not Harper Whitmore." I stared at the folder, and for the first time since the slap, I felt something far worse than humiliation. Fear. Because buried inside that thin stack of paper was a truth so large it would rewrite every memory I had and reveal that the man who destroyed me last night was only the beginning. The apartment smelled like cold coffee and dried mascara. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's hand moving toward me in slow motion, the way his ring caught the chandelier light just before impact. My phone lay face down on the table, buzzing itself to death. I didn't need to look. I already knew what the world was saying about me. By sunrise, the video had crossed 10 million views. Billionaire slaps daughter at birthday gala. Family drama turns violent. Was she asking for it? I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, tracing the faint bruise along my jaw. It was already turning yellow at the edges, like a rotting fruit. Proof that it had happened. Proof that it hadn't been a nightmare. I whispered my name, Claire Whitmore, as if saying it out loud might steady me. It didn't. At 9:17 a.m., 3 sharp knocks cut through the silence. Not frantic, not aggressive, controlled. I froze, one hand gripping the sink. For a wild second I imagined my father standing there, regret finally outweighing his pride. The image vanished as quickly as it came. "Miss Whitmore?" a woman's voice called. Calm, professional. "Please open the door." I cracked it an inch. 3 strangers filled the hallway, 2 men in immaculate dark suits. One woman with silver threaded through her hair, her posture straight as a verdict. She held a leather briefcase like an extension of her arm. "We're not press," she said before I could speak. "And we're not here on behalf of Richard Whitmore." My stomach tightened. "Then you're lost," I said. "No," she replied gently. "We're exactly where we need to be." She introduced herself and handed me a card. The letters swam in front of my eyes. Senior partner. Law firm I'd seen on financial news segments, always attached to billion-dollar settlements. "This conversation isn't for a hallway," she said. "May we come in?" Every instinct told me to shut the door, but something colder, something older, held it open. Inside my apartment, the men took seats without speaking. The woman placed her briefcase on the table and opened it with deliberate care, as if each movement mattered. "Miss Whitmore," she began, "the man who struck you last night is not your biological father." I laughed. A sharp, broken sound. "That's impossible," I said. "I came out of my mother's body. I have photos." She slid a thin file toward me. "You came out of a woman," she said softly. "Just not the one you think." The folder felt heavier than paper should. My name was typed neatly on the tab. Claire Whitmore. Birth date. Place of birth. Then another name beneath it, smaller, almost hidden. Elena Monroe. "That's not me," I said immediately, pushing the file back as if it might bite. "You've made a mistake." The woman didn't move it back. 34 years ago, she said, a 6-month-old infant was taken from Laurelhurst Park in Portland, Oregon. The case went cold within weeks. One of the men opened the folder fully, spreading its contents across my kitchen table. Police reports, grainy photographs, newspaper clippings yellowed with time. Then the photo that stole my breath. A young couple sat on a park bench, sunlight spilling through trees behind them. The woman held a baby wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. The man leaned close, his arm protective, his smile strained with joy. The woman had my face. Not similar. Identical. "That was taken 2 weeks before the kidnapping," the lawyer said. "Do you recognize the bracelet on the baby's wrist?" My heart stuttered. I looked down at my own wrist, the silver chain, the tiny train charm. I had worn it for as long as I could remember. My father, Richard, had told me it was a Whitmore heirloom, passed down through generations. "No," I whispered, "that's impossible." "It was registered with the Portland Police Department," she said. "Engraved, documented, photographed." My knees buckled. I dropped into the chair behind me. "Your DNA was flagged 3 months ago," she continued, "through a genealogy database. The match was undeniable." One of the men spoke for the first time. "Your adoptive parents falsified documents through an offshore agency. The trail was well hidden, but not perfect." "Adoptive?" The word tasted wrong. "You're saying my mother, Vivian Whitmore," the woman interrupted gently, "matches the age-progressed composite of the kidnapping suspect." The room tilted. Memories flashed. Vivian's tight smiles, her obsession with appearances, the way she clutched me too hard when cameras were near and barely touched me when they weren't. "She wanted a child," the lawyer said. "And she got one." My chest burned. "Where are they?" I asked hoarsely. The woman closed the file. "They're being watched," she said. "But that's not why we're here." She met my eyes, and for the first time her composure cracked. "Your biological father has been searching for you for 34 years, she said. "He's downstairs." Silence swallowed the room. "He's been waiting," she added quietly, "for his daughter to come home." The elevator ride felt like a slow descent into someone else's life. Judith, she told me her name was Judith, stood beside me without speaking, hands folded at her waist, as if she were escorting a witness to the stand. The two men watched the panel of numbers as it dropped, floor by floor, and I watched my reflection in the brushed metal doors. My eyes were swollen, my cheek was bruised. My mouth kept opening like I had words, but nothing came out. When the doors parted, the lobby light hit hard, too bright, too honest. And then I saw him. He was standing near the front windows, tall and rigid in a charcoal coat, both hands clasped like he was holding himself together by force. Silver hair, neatly cut. A face that had learned patience the way some faces learn cruelty. He didn't look like my father, not like Richard Whitmore, but his eyes, green, clear, unmistakably familiar. He noticed me and froze, like the world had stuttered. His throat worked, as if swallowing something sharp. "Lily?" he whispered. The sound of that name, Lily, hit me like vertigo. My skin prickled. I stood still, unable to step forward or back, as if movement would confirm this was real. I think so," I managed, and the words came out thin, almost embarrassed, like I was apologizing for existing. He took one cautious step, then another, stopping a few feet away as though he didn't trust permission. His hands lifted slightly, then fell again. "You still have it," he said, voice breaking. He nodded at my wrist. I looked down. The silver bracelet glinted under the lobby lights. Tiny train charm. The weight of it suddenly felt unbearable. "You gave me this?" I asked. His lips trembled. "Your mother did. She said you'd love trains. She used to take you near the tracks just to watch your face light up when you heard the whistle." Something inside me cracked, because I had always loved the sound of trains. Even as a child, I would stop walking to listen, my heart turning toward the noise like it belonged there. Richard used to call it a strange habit. Vivian used to shush me, annoyed, when I'd press my cheek to the window at night. This man stared at me like he'd been holding his breath for decades. "My name is Magnus Monroe," he said. I'm your father." Judith and the two lawyers faded into the background. People walked through the lobby, laughing softly, scrolling phones, living normal lives. But the air between me and Magnus felt thick, charged, dangerous. A memory flickered. Nothing clear, just the sensation of being held in sunlight. A scent of lavender. A train horn far away. It vanished before I could grab it. "I don't know what to do," I whispered. Magnus nodded slowly. "You don't have to do anything. He swallowed hard, eyes glassy. "I just needed to see you with my own eyes." Then, softly, almost ashamed, "May I?" He didn't finish. My legs moved before my brain could argue, one step, then another. And suddenly his arms were around me, careful at first like I might disappear, then tighter, like he'd been waiting his whole life to prove he wouldn't let go again. He smelled like cedar and rain, clean, grounded, real, not cologne and marble and entitlement. A sob tore out of me, ugly and involuntary. I pressed my face into his shoulder, and for the first time since the ballroom, I felt something other than humiliation. I felt safe. We stood like that until my breathing slowed. When we finally pulled apart, his eyes were shining. "Your mother," he said, voice trembling, "would have loved this moment." The words hit harder than any slap. "She's alive?" I asked, already afraid of the answer. Magnus shook his head once, gently. "No. Eleanor died 5 years ago." The lobby blurred. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. "She never stopped believing you were alive," he added quickly, like he needed me to know that part most. "Even when the police told us the trail was gone, she kept your room the same. She wrote letters, every birthday, every Christmas. She kept waiting." My throat closed. "Letters?" Magnus nodded, eyes wet. "Boxes of them. Addressed to you, to Lily, for when you came home." Judith stepped closer, voice soft. "Mr. Monroe didn't come for revenge, Miss Whitmore. He came for you." I stared at my bracelet again, the train charm trembling slightly with my pulse. A thought rose, sharp and unwelcome. If Magnus had been searching for me, then someone had been hiding me. And hiding me takes more than paperwork. It takes fear. It takes silence. It takes people who will do anything to keep the past buried. Magnus brushed a knuckle near my cheek, careful not to touch the bruise. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry you grew up with them." "With them," I repeated, and the words tasted like poison. "They're my family." "No," Magnus said, firm now, and the sudden strength in his voice startled me. "They are the people who took you." Outside the lobby windows, a train horn sounded faintly in the distance. Long, lonely, familiar. And I realized with a chill that it didn't feel like a sound from the city. It felt like a signal. 2 weeks later, I sat in a black sedan across from Ravenswood Country Club, my hands clenched so tightly my nails left crescents in my palms. It was a Tuesday, Richard's golf day, predictable as gravity. Magnus sat beside me, silent, jaw tight, eyes locked on the club's terrace where laughter floated over trimmed hedges and perfect lawns. Judith's text had arrived 5 minutes earlier. "It's happening. Stay in the car." Inside, Richard wore a crisp white polo, his hair silver and controlled, his smile the same one he'd worn at my humiliation. Polished, untouchable, confident that the world belonged to him. Vivian stood near him in a wide-brimmed hat, sipping a mimosa like she didn't have blood under her manicure. They looked peaceful. That was the sickest part. As if 34 years of theft could be washed clean with Sunday brunch and private memberships. Then the first black SUV turned in, then the second. Doors opened. Agents poured out in navy jackets, moving fast and purposeful. For one unreal second, I thought it was a security drill, a celebrity threat, anything but the truth arriving in uniform. Richard noticed the movement and frowned, annoyed, like someone had interrupted his leisure. 2 agents approached him on the terrace. I watched his smile falter. Not fear yet, confusion. Offended confusion. "What is this?" he barked, stepping back. "Do you know who I am?" One agent's voice carried, loud enough for every golfer and waiter and socialite to hear. "Richard Whitmore, Vivian Whitmore. You are under arrest for the kidnapping of Lily Eleanor Monroe, also known as Claire Whitmore." The air turned electric. A club member gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered like punctuation. Phones rose, again. Always the phones. Richard's face drained, then reddened with fury. "This is insanity," he shouted. "She's my daughter. I raised her." Across the parking lot, behind tinted glass, my lungs refused to work. Vivian's composure broke first. She staggered, clutching her chest as if the truth had physically struck her. Tears ran instantly, smearing mascara, turning her into a mess of black streaks and trembling denial. "We just wanted a child," she sobbed. "We loved her. Loved. As if love could erase a crime." Richard struggled when they reached for his wrists. The cuffs clicked shut. A small metallic sound that felt louder than any applause he'd ever received. The club erupted in chaos. Whispers, shrieks, cameras zooming, men shouting lawyers' names as if that could undo handcuffs. Then Richard turned his head. He searched and found me. Even through the windshield, even at this distance, I knew that look. It wasn't the cold contempt from the ballroom. It wasn't the arrogant disgust that had defined my childhood. It was something else. Fear, not of prison, not of scandal. Fear of what I might say next. His lips moved. I couldn't hear it, but I read it easily. Claire, not Lily, not my real name. The name he'd built like a cage and wrapped around my throat. Magnus's hand slid over mine, warm, grounding. "You don't have to watch," he said quietly. "I do," I whispered. Because if I looked away now, some part of me would keep belonging to them. Richard was shoved toward the SUV. Vivian stumbled after, still sobbing, reaching out as if she could touch the air and pull her lie back into place. As they passed the terrace doors, the same people who had watched my public execution now watched theirs, filming every second like justice was just another form of entertainment. A sick thought surfaced. They were going to make me viral again. Not as a victim, as a headline. And then a second, colder thought followed right behind it. If the FBI had enough to arrest them now, why hadn't they come sooner? Who had protected the Whitmores for 3 decades? The SUVs pulled away. The country club's pristine calm was shattered, but inside me there was no triumph. Only a hollow space where a life used to be. Magnus exhaled slowly. "It's over," he said. I stared at my bracelet, the little train charm shaking against my skin. "No," I whispered, "it's just finally starting." That night, every news channel replayed the arrests like it was a trailer for a movie. B-roll of the country club. Freeze frame on Richard's face as the handcuffs clicked. Vivian's mascara streaking down her cheeks. The anchor voices kept using my stolen name like it belonged to them. Claire Whitmore, now revealed to be kidnapping victim Lily Monroe. I turned the TV off after 10 seconds and still heard it in my skull. Magnus offered me the guest room at his downtown condo, but I stayed in my apartment. It felt wrong to abandon the only space that had ever been mine, even if it had been built on a lie. I sat at my kitchen table, the case file spread open again, the pages glowing under a lamp like evidence in an interrogation room. Judith's final words echoed. "Your DNA was flagged through a genealogy database." Flagged, like I was a threat. I kept circling one detail until it cut into me. The timing. If the FBI reopened the case 3 months ago, why had no one warned me? If Magnus had resources, real resources, why had it taken decades? The official story said cold case and lost leads, but the Whitmores didn't survive by being lucky. Richard had spent his life bending systems, buying silence, turning rules into suggestions. Somewhere, in some office, a file had been ignored for the right price. My phone buzzed, a private number. I almost didn't answer. When I did, a man's voice said, "Ms. Whitmore?" The name made my teeth clench. "This is Special Agent Daniel Price," he said. "FBI, I need to ask you a few questions." My throat tightened. I already gave a statement. "This isn't about the statement," he replied. His tone was flat, careful. "This is about what we found in Richard Whitmore's home office after the arrest." My pulse spiked. "Found what?" A pause, just long enough to feel intentional. "A locked drawer," he said. "Inside it, a second bracelet. Identical to yours, same train charm, same style, same age." My wrist went cold. "That's impossible," I whispered. "We also found photographs," Price continued, voice lowering. "Surveillance photos. Of you. Taken over the last 12 months. The room shrank around me. "What do you mean, surveillance?" I asked, and my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. "Street angles, building entries, your studio, your commute. It looks like someone was tracking you." I felt Magnus's words from the lobby land in my bones. They were hiding you. But the pictures meant something worse. They weren't just hiding me. They were watching me. Recently. "Why?" I asked, barely audible. "We're still putting it together," Price said. "But there's another thing. A name in the drawer with the photos. Written on a note. Not Richard's handwriting." He read it slowly. "Maria Santos." My skin prickled. "That's the nanny," I said. "Judith said she confessed on her deathbed." "Yes," Price replied. "But according to our records, Maria Santos isn't dead." I couldn't breathe. Price kept talking, but my ears filled with a rushing sound, like a train passing too close. I gripped the edge of the table as if the apartment might slide away. "She's alive?" I managed. "She is," Price said, "and she's missing." The call ended with a promise of follow-up, but nothing about his voice sounded like reassurance. It sounded like a warning. I sat there for a long time, staring at my bracelet, the train charm resting against my skin like a tiny weight of prophecy. If Maria Santos was alive and missing, then someone had lied to Judith, to Magnus, to me. And if Richard had been tracking me this past year, then the arrest hadn't caught him off guard. It had interrupted something. A soft knock came at my door, so quiet I almost imagined it. I froze, every muscle locking. Then another knock, 3 precise taps. My heart hammered. I didn't move. The handle turned, not hard, like someone with a key testing it gently. My breath stopped completely. I had locked the door, hadn't I? The latch clicked, and the door began to open. I didn't scream. Shock has a way of stealing the noise from you, leaving only the pounding of your own blood. I stood behind the kitchen counter like it could protect me, my hands searching for anything. Knife, bottle, something heavy. The door opened 2 inches. A face appeared in the gap. An older woman. Weathered skin. Dark hair shot through with gray. Eyes sharp enough to cut glass. She stared at me like she recognized me, like she'd been waiting. "Lily," she breathed. The name hit me like a fist. I stepped backward. "Who are you?" Her gaze flicked to my wrist, the bracelet, the train. Her mouth tightened as if she'd bitten down on a secret. "My name is Maria," she said softly. "Maria Santos." The room tilted again, but this time it wasn't disbelief. It was the sick realization that the nightmare had just grown teeth. "You're supposed to be dead," I whispered. Maria's lips curled, not quite a smile, more like exhaustion. "I was supposed to stay dead," she corrected. I could barely form words. "Why are you here?" She pushed the door wider, and I saw she wasn't alone. A man stood in the hallway behind her, half hidden, wearing a maintenance uniform. His gaze swept my apartment fast, too fast, like he was checking exits. Maria followed my eyes and said, "Don't be afraid, he's with me." That didn't help. My voice shook. "Judith said you confessed." "I did," Maria interrupted, stepping inside. She moved like someone who'd learned to walk quietly in dangerous places. "But not on my deathbed. They wrote that part for convenience." "Who?" I demanded. Maria's eyes flicked upward, like the ceiling might have ears. "The Whitmores," she said, "and not just them." A coldness crawled up my spine. I thought of Agent Price, of the photos, of the identical bracelet in Richard's drawer, of surveillance. Maria reached into her coat and pulled out a folded photograph. She didn't hand it to me right away. She held it like it hurt. "You were taken in a park," she said, "but you weren't taken by a stranger." My mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" Maria unfolded the photo and slid it across the counter. It was a picture of Vivian. Not from galas or magazine spreads. This was older, grainier. Vivian stood in profile in a hospital corridor, hair tied back, face bare. She was holding a baby, not wrapped in yellow, wrapped in white. A hospital blanket. Maria's voice turned hoarse. That photo was taken the day before the kidnapping. My throat tightened. So she planned it. Maria shook her head slowly. She didn't plan it alone. The maintenance man shifted behind her, impatient. Maria shot him a look that made him go still. She leaned closer to me. "They didn't steal you because they wanted a child," she whispered. "They stole you because they needed the right child." My skin went ice cold. The right child for what? Maria hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw fear, real fear, the kind that lives in the body. Then she said, "For leverage." I stared at her. "Leverage over who?" Maria's eyes glistened. "Over your father, over Magnus Monroe." The air in the apartment turned heavy. "You're lying," I said, but it sounded weak even to me. Maria's voice cracked. "I was paid $50,000 to look away for 5 minutes. I thought it was a private adoption. When I realized what it was, I tried to go to the police." She swallowed hard. "And then Richard Whitmore's people found me." A tremor ran through her hands. "They told me if I spoke, they'd make sure you disappeared again, permanently." My stomach lurched. The maintenance man stepped forward. "We don't have time," he muttered. Maria's eyes snapped to him, then back to me. "They're going to come," she said urgently. "Not for me, for you." I felt my pulse in my teeth. "Why now?" Maria's gaze dropped to my wrist. Because you still have the bracelet, she whispered. I stared at the tiny train charm, suddenly seeing it not as jewelry, but as a tag, a marker, a claim. Maria reached into her pocket again and pulled out something small. Another identical bracelet, duller, older, the train charm scratched. This one, she said, voice shaking, was kept in evidence. Until it wasn't. She opened my hand and pressed it into my palm. They found the match, she whispered. They know you're Lily, and if you become Lily publicly, Richard loses everything. I thought of the surveillance photos, the second bracelet, the drawer. Richard had been preparing. For what? Maria's eyes filled with tears. I came because I can't live with it anymore, and because Eleanor's gone. She can't protect you now. My throat closed at my mother's name. Maria grabbed my wrist gently, turning the bracelet so the underside caught the light. There's an engraving, she said. Under the clasp. Tiny. I frowned. I'd never looked. With shaking fingers, I unclasped it and flipped it over. A set of letters and numbers. So small I almost missed them. Not a name, not a date. A code. Maria exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. That, she whispered, is why they took you. And before I could ask what the code meant, the hallway lights outside flickered. The maintenance man stiffened. They're here, he hissed. Maria's face drained of color. From somewhere below, I heard footsteps in the stairwell, fast, coordinated, not neighbors, not police. Then a voice, low and commanding, called from the hall. Claire Whitmore, open the door. My stomach dropped. They used my stolen name like a weapon. Maria grabbed my arm hard. Do not answer, she whispered. If they take you, Magnus will never find you again. The doorknob rattled. Once, twice. Then the lock began to pick, and I realized, with a cold clarity, that the Whitmores hadn't been arrested too late. They'd been arrested too early. We didn't leave through the door. Maria yanked me toward the fire escape as the lock finally gave way behind us. The maintenance man shoved the window open with practiced speed, metal screeching softly. Cold night air rushed in, sharp and alive. Go, he said. Not loudly, not urgently, like this wasn't his first time. I climbed out on shaking legs, my heart pounding so hard it felt audible. Behind me, the apartment door burst open. Heavy footsteps. A man's voice. Controlled, irritated. Search every room. Maria followed me onto the fire escape, pulling the window shut just as a shadow crossed the kitchen wall. We descended fast, hands burning on cold iron. Sirens wailed somewhere far away, too far to help. On the street, the maintenance man peeled off his jacket and disappeared into traffic like he'd never existed. Maria grabbed my arm. We can't go to your father, she said. They'll be watching him now. My father? I snapped, breathless. Which one? She flinched. Magnus, she said. The real one. We ducked into a laundromat 2 blocks over, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The place was empty except for a humming dryer and the smell of detergent. Maria locked the door, then leaned against it, chest heaving. You need to understand what that code is, she said, pointing at my bracelet. I opened my palm. The tiny numbers stared back at me, meaningless and terrifying. It's not a serial number, she said. It's an access key. To what? I demanded. Maria closed her eyes. To a trust, an old one, set up before you were born. I stared at her. By Magnus? She shook her head slowly. By Eleanor. The name hit me like a bruise. My mother. She knew, Maria said. She didn't know who would come for you, but she knew someone would. The world tilted. Why wouldn't she tell Magnus? Because she didn't trust anyone connected to Whitmore, Maria replied. And she was right. Maria told me then, about Eleanor's suspicions, about strange calls, about men watching the house before the kidnapping, about a financial structure hidden inside Magnus's early company, designed to protect something, or someone, if Eleanor disappeared. You, Maria said. It was always you. I thought of the second bracelet in Richard's drawer, the surveillance photos, the timing. They weren't tracking me because they were afraid, I whispered. They were tracking me because they were waiting. Maria nodded grimly. Waiting for you to activate the trust. My stomach dropped. What happens if I do? She met my eyes. Every illegal transfer, every bribe, every shell company tied to Whitmore's empire becomes visible. I swallowed. And what happens to me? Maria didn't answer. That was answer enough. Magnus found us at dawn. Not through police channels, not through lawyers. He followed a pattern Eleanor had left behind, one Maria had memorized out of guilt and fear. When he walked into the safe house, his face crumpled with relief that barely masked terror. They tried to take you, he said hoarsely. I nodded. They almost did. Maria told him everything. About the code, the trust, Eleanor's preparations. Magnus listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from shock to something darker. Understanding. She suspected Whitmore years before the kidnapping, he said quietly. I thought it was paranoia. You thought wrong, I said, not unkindly. Silence stretched between us, heavy with regret. The decision landed on me like a weight. Activating the trust would finish Whitmore, permanently, but it would also paint a target on my back, one bigger than before. I'm tired of running, I said finally. Magnus's jaw tightened. Then we do this clean, public, protected. The press conference was set within hours. When I stepped up to the podium, cameras flashed like lightning. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. My name is Lily Eleanor Monroe, I said, and I was stolen. Gasps rippled through the room. I spoke about the kidnapping, about the surveillance, about the code, about the trust my mother had built like a time bomb wrapped in love. Then I activated it. The data spilled out in real time, accounts, transfers, names, politicians, judges, corporations. Whitmore's empire wasn't just built on theft, it was built on rot. By nightfall, indictments were stacking like dominoes. Richard Whitmore didn't make it through the first hearing without collapsing. Vivian stared straight ahead, empty, as if the lie had finally consumed her whole. Maria entered witness protection that same night. Before she left, she pressed my hand. I'm sorry it took me so long, she whispered. So am I said, and meant it. The ocean doesn't care about your past. That's what I learned standing on the Oregon coast months later. The wind sharp and clean, waves breaking with steady indifference. I had sold the Chicago apartment, left the name behind, let the noise die. I opened a restoration workshop near the water, wood, paint, broken things waiting to be made whole. I named it Eleanor's Hands. Magnus visited often, but never hovered. He let me choose the pace, the distance, the shape of what we were becoming. Some days we talked for hours. Some days we worked in silence. The letters came last. A wooden box, dozens of envelopes. For when you come home. I read them slowly, carefully, like each word might vanish if I rushed. In the final letter my mother had written, "They may take your name, they may take your place, but they cannot take what you choose to build." I wear both bracelets now, the one I grew up with and the one Eleanor hid from the world. Two pieces of the same truth. I'm not the woman they bought. I'm not the child they tried to use. I'm Lily Eleanor Monroe, and my life didn't begin with what was stolen from me. It began with what I chose to uncover, and what I chose, finally, to make whole.